Just me and a bag of trash. That's where I throw all my bad paintings. Okay, making art is such an unreasonable thing to do. It's pretty impractical, it can be pretty silly, it's not at all a linear process. It's also so much fun. And that's what this video is about. So I'm a little embarrassed to show this footage, but those paintings I had laying out, these paintings, they actually started with a whole different painting, one that is now dead to me. This guy. For context, I'm traveling somewhere new and I started this guy back in the beginning of March on my very first day here. I think I was like high off the Pacific Ocean because I was so unrealistically wildly optimistic about how frankly incredible and groundbreaking this painting was going to be. It did start on a good note. For one, everyone was being so friendly.
Can I see?
See, I just started, so not much to look at right now, but...
When you are somewhere new and you are clearly a foreigner, it's nice to know that everyone is happy to have you there, including these beach patrol guys. You couldn't see this, but they called me Amiga and gave me a fist bump, which I really appreciated. I've spent a lot of time painting in public parks and areas, and the security patrol people, especially in foreign countries, are always so lovely, despite how they do always make me feel like I'm about to get in trouble when they first come up. Now, I do generally enjoy these interactions with strangers. However, I did make the mistake of telling multiple groups of people that I was going to be back in that same spot the next morning.
I will be here tomorrow.
And in retrospect, I was not super comfortable with the fact that there were now quite a few people who knew exactly when and where I was going to be. So I did not return the next morning and instead set up in the comfort of my room. There are a lot of upsides to working inside in a studio as compared to out on site. You just have much more control over your environment. Sand isn't getting in your paint, waves aren't almost crashing on you, the sun and the clouds aren't constantly moving and therefore drastically changing the lighting on you every few minutes. People aren't interrupting you, you don't have to carry your supplies a long way, all theoretically very nice things. All things that make the experience of painting much more streamlined and practical. I was so deeply bored this day though. Like, I kept stopping painting to play chess, and if chess is the thing that's winning my attention over, I'm so bored. So I thought I would solve my boredom by day 3, going back out on site. You see, all those annoying little elements you can't control, like the sand and the waves and the clouds moving on you that make painting outside often quite impractical, they do also do a great job at making you not bored. You might be frustrated, but you won't be bored. All those elements serve to like keep you on your toes. They force you to be more engaged with the environment in a very, very helpful way, in a way in which I'm not reaching for my phone to play chess of all things. And being back out there did definitely help. I did feel reinvigorated. That being said, this was the end for the painting. It ended up in the metaphorical trash bag pretty soon after this session. It had been just fine, but you know, my initial plans of inspired greatness that I had for this guy weren't really coming to fruition, so time to move on. By the way, I always have that plan and it never comes to fruition, but we persist. But frankly, the biggest reason I moved on was that, well, something much more exciting found me next. Now, there is a reason I've included that whole first painting. Even though it didn't amount to much on its own, I do think it was an important part of the process of the paintings that are about to come. And that is because, as the saying goes, inspiration finds you working. I think that's what was happening here. This first painting got me out and working, which is crucial. I definitely think it's true that you have to be in a routine of working, of pursuing something in order for actual inspiration, if you will, to strike. Sitting around on your lazy ass waiting won't cut it. And I might be saying all this to try to convince myself that it wasn't a waste of time and materials, but I'm convinced. So yeah, this painting was a start, which is great. What came next though, what found me next, ended up being much more fun and sustaining. It's quite funny sometimes the things that can inspire you to create. Like, the beach wasn't quite doing it for me apparently, but this minor architectural quirk in the wall really was. I just really liked the shape of it, this tall, skinny rectangle. It just grabbed me, and once it did, I immediately knew that that first painting was dud to me, and that my new mission was to make a painting for the Nook. And maybe that sounds like a silly reason to make a painting, and it probably is, but to be honest, a lot of making art is quite silly, so here we are. I was so energized at this point, so excited to have just started this new big painting, so naturally I wanted to start another one. So I turned to the next wall and thought I would put here a horizontal friend for my tall skinny guy. I was still apparently in the mood to start more things because now here I was trying to figure out what to do with these scraps I had left over. I was basically envisioning doing 3 little paintings and then sewing them together to create yet another long rectangular image. I think the collaging I'd been doing in Photoshop made me want to like literally stitch images together IRL. So while I was starting this guy, I was also thinking about what I wanted to eventually paint on that horizontal canvas I had just put up. I knew I wanted a lot of figures, and I knew it would also probably involve like collaging multiple images together like the first one had. So I decided to go out before it got dark to get pictures, and I scored. The light was perfect, the people were out and about, and I got so many pictures that I ended up spending hours that night collaging together in different ways to create this like beach panorama situation. Please ignore the red lines. I'm working on unstretched canvas obviously, but I'm planning on stretching them eventually, which means I need a good sized border around the painting so I can pull it over the stretcher bars. I initially drew my rectangle for the image a bit wider than I wanted, so the smaller rectangle is at this point what I'm actually thinking the dimensions of the painting will be. Though, as you will see, that changes a lot. I go through several interesting stages with this painting where I end up playing with different ideas of how wide or skinny it should be, which is definitely one of the joys of working with unstretched canvas because it gives you that freedom to change dimensions whenever you want. Like, you don't have to decide on the final dimensions until you are actually making the bars and stretching it. I thought I would point out that you will see in this painting quite a few vertical seams. These are happening because, well, like I already shared, I was collaging quite a few different photos together to get this whole scene, and from one photo to the next, the lighting, and therefore the colors of the sand and sky in particular, changed quite a bit. So these seams are where like one photo is meeting a new photo. I debated early on if I should try to hide this and make everything look more uniform for the sake of not having these edges. However, for the most part, I decided against that and instead wanted to embrace all those shifts in color. It made for this very patchworky appearance that I actually quite liked. You are going to see me jump back and forth between particularly the 2 big paintings. It is really important to me to have multiple projects going on that I can jump between, and I've edited this exactly just like chronologically. Like when you see me jump from one to another, it's because that's how I was actually working on them. Okay, now this painting is about to take a little bit of a turn. I think what happened is because I had those white bars, which again were just there because I initially drew my borders for the painting like a little bit too large. Because those white bars were there, I just kept wanting to fill them in with something, but I didn't want more sky or sand, so I ended up putting a little green and purple down there to see how I felt about it. I wasn't sure how I felt, so I left it alone for the day, and in the meantime, did some handstands. I don't know why I'm including this, except it is genuinely what I spend half my time doing while I'm painting, quote unquote painting. I also got some more detail in on these two figures, and after they were done, I took the Nook painting down. It had been about a week of working at this point, and I was going to be moving to a new location soon. So even though it wasn't finished, it was at a good stopping point, so I just took it down so I could start packing things up. I came back to this the next day and decided I liked the concept but hated the colors, so you will see me now attempt to find colors I do like. In the process, really, I just ended up massacring my canvas. I was really in a more is more mindset at this point, apparently. I remember wanting to incorporate the colors at the bottom in with the rest of the painting, hence all this layering going on. I don't know, I'm really trying not to pass judgment on this right now as my current self, because I know it turned out okay, but watching this footage, I am questioning. I was a little stressed about it, so I took a little break with my little guys with my soon-to-be 3-part sunset. You'll see me sew it together soon, so the vision will make sense. And then I finally got the courage up to come back to the horizontal. I decided I hated the peach, so I added yellow, which I don't know why I thought that would help. Really, I just ended up making more of a mess. The next good chunk of video is essentially me trying to fix this mess. Working on top of all these colors, trying to bring it back down to earth, if you will. Really focusing on my reference images and being honest to them. I fluctuate back and forth for a while between doing that and then coming in and layering even more of these other colors. Now, not to overanalyze, but I think I do have a compulsion to want to have something to fight with. And I think in a way, introducing all these other colors that aren't actually found in my reference, it's a way of introducing something that I then have to deal with, figure out what to do with, resolve somehow. And that process I really like. It keeps me on my toes, just like how I was describing painting outside at the beginning of this video. It is good to be kept on your toes. And having to deal with external elements that you can't control or you just aren't really dictating is very often quite good and helpful in the creative process. It can invite you to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. Or maybe it's more accurate to say that it puts you in situations where you have to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. Maybe? I think that's what's happening with my colors. I don't know. Maybe it would be better for me to say I just put all these colors down because I wanted to and leave it at that. No analysis necessary. That is one of the nice things about being an artist, actually. You can just do stuff, whatever you like, even if it's stupid or doesn't make sense. People might roll their eyes, but they won't really be surprised or question you. They'll just be like, oh, well, she's an artist. He's an artist. They're just doing their thing. And then they'll move on. It really is just a great catch-all explanation for any behavior in or out of your studio. Okay. And I didn't forget about this guy. I'm starting here to sew the scraps together. The paintings weren't finished, and one of them I hadn't even started yet, but I just wanted them together so I could see the overall shape that it would be. Here, I didn't like how wide the composition had grown, and I wanted to go back to something closer to my original size. I wanted it to be skinnier. So I put the blue tape over just to give myself a visual of where I will end up cropping it. I'm about to start really digging into this towel man at this point. He definitely became a focal point. I was looking at two different photos I had of him, one with the towel up and one with it down. Initially, I was just planning on using the towel up photo. Actually, if you go back to the beginning, you can see I initially painted his whole body using that reference, so his arms were up and more extended. However, I ended up repainting him to match more of what I was seeing in the other photo. I also painted in some of the towel in that down position. I didn't want to get rid of the other towel though. I really liked the motion of it in the air, so I spent a while trying to resolve having both these moments in the painting. This does bring me to kind of an interesting point. For a lot of these figures, I had multiple images of each person, like in slightly different positions. So this happened a few different places where I repainted the same person in several different positions to find something that worked best. I definitely enjoy that process of like layering and layering and more layering. Here with this group of people that I am repainting now, their body positions mostly stay the same. I just needed them lower down on the canvas. This was just an effort to try to make the perspective make sense. Again, because I was collaging photos, it took me a bit to figure out like how big everyone should be in relationship to each other and how far up or down the canvas they would be. And at this point, y'all, my time in this room had come to an end. It was about 3 weeks total that I spent working on these paintings in this room, but I was traveling, so I had to move to the next spot and finish my paintings there. I had panels and palette paper back here. These were little wooden blocks that I was intending to paint on at some point. I had tape, my mediums, cups, paper towels, all of my paint. The bag in the back is just extra tubes of colors I go through quickly. Then I have these paint cups I take when I paint outside, this miscellaneous bag, and a jar with my paintbrushes and palette knives. I was gone for a total of 3 months, and all of that was everything I had brought. Here you can see I'm unfolding all my canvases. I'm trying to find the 2 beach ones. Slightly, unfortunately, they had been a little tacky when I folded them up, which, I mean, paint takes so long to actually completely dry, so that's not surprising. But when I unfolded them, there were some spots like these where the paint got messed up a little. I wasn't too worried about it. I was still planning on doing quite a bit to the painting, so fixing those little areas wasn't gonna be a big deal. I decided at this point to just focus on the vertical one. Often when I approach the end of a painting, I'll stop jumping around from project to project to just focus on getting one thing done. So I hung the horizontal on the clothing rack and got to work on finishing the cliffs. I'm really going to be speeding through a lot of the footage I have now, but I worked on this every day for about a week before I finally called it finished. I'll put a timestamp so you can skip to where I show the finished piece. I have to admit though, rewatching this now, it is kind of sucking me back into the image, and I'm very tempted to give the surface another go. This might be too abstract of a statement, but I feel like a lack of meat when I look at the surface. I think there is potential for the paint to get a lot more built up. My other critique is that it feels like some colors are way too saturated and then others are way too muddy, and it's creating kind of a disunity in the image that I'm not really feeling. So that's another reason I'm tempted to come back. We will see. If I do, it will be several months from now, but maybe I'll make a little note in the description with a link to the final image if I ever do continue this. There is a strong possibility that I look at it in a few weeks and feel totally differently about it, so we'll see. So it was time for the horizontal guy to come back out. I also couldn't forget about the trio. I finished this one really quick. Bam! This is how it turned out. I'll insert a picture without the blue tape so you can really see it. This is what it will look like once it's stretched. And with the trio done, there was just one left to finish. So yeah, for the horizontal, I worked on it here and there for about another week. And I want to show you how it progressed via some photos rather than video. There were quite a few changes, particularly with the figures. I covered up a lot of them, added some new ones, repainted the same ones but in different positions. A lot of just like shifting elements. And that was it. 5 weeks of painting. It's so fun.